Good evening, friends, and happy Thanksgiving. I am fresh off my deathbed. I have literally no idea how this show is going to go, Dan, because this is the first time I've attempted to talk fantasy football in going on 17 days now. But how are you this evening, my friend?
I am great. I get 5 days of no work, 5 days of no hockey games or practices.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, that's the big one.
feeling amazing.
Marlia made this dope hat, and I decided to rock my glasses. And Dan, you made a comment before the show that the less of my face I show, the better everything looks on my side of the screen. I appreciate that. So
Oh, you're welcome, but I just like to keep it honest with you.
there you go. And I'm sure Marlia likes that you're complimenting the hat in a roundabout
The
way.
hat's awesome. I think she needs to have some kind of strap thing come down to cushion your beard, to keep
Oh,
your
I
beard
like it.
warm. You know what I mean? Like
I mean,
that.
she didn't make this for me at all. I just put it on to take trash out, and she thought it was hilarious. And I said, I'm going to wear it on the show tonight. So here we are, folks. It is week 12, and we are doing this show early because there are 3 games tomorrow on Thanksgiving and another one, the first ever Black Friday game in the NFL, before going to a normal Sunday games and nobody on bye this week. 3 games left in our regular season. Playoff spots still up for grabs. We are going to refine the show a little bit. We are going to talk about week 12, and then we are going to end the show really just focusing on the playoffs. So look at it as a 2-tiered show right now. Dan, you went 5-2 last week. For those who were wondering, he went 6-1 the week before that when I had to miss a week. I've went 5-2 each of the last 2 weeks, Dan. That brings me to 46 wins on the season to your 49 wins on the season. So it is going to be a race towards the end, but you are in the lead right now.
I was really hoping AJ Brown was going to go off on Monday night, and I could have finished 6-1 and got another game on you. But
that would have been a problem.
he
Phil went
decided
5-2. Or no, Phil went 4-3 the week he was with us. Darren, if you're in the chat, let us know how you're doing on the season so far. So I know Darren plays along with us every week. Dan, so I have it broken down like I always do. Games that I think matter and games that I don't think matter. So let's go ahead and get my screen up here. All right, first game, we're going to go Greg versus Kenny. Greg sitting at 4 wins, Kenny sitting at 2 wins. Kenny somehow, someway misses that Antonio Gibson was out last week and loses a point in the lottery. So these are the 2 teams facing one another who have lost points in the lottery. Dan, I'm going to let you get us started here. Who do you got winning this matchup?
So my first, I think Kenny wins. He's been really close on some games. I think this will be a close game. I think he's going to pull off the win this week. I don't trust a hurt Geno going against San Francisco. But my question is, do you think that he just didn't know he wasn't playing, or do you think that he just didn't want to cut anybody?
I think he actually had players he could have put in regardless.
I agree 1,000%. He can cut that Browns quarterback. He's worthless.
Oh, no, I think he actually had active players on his bench. Let me scroll back to week 11 here. Oh, okay. Did you go look? Okay.
Yep. He had 2. He had the terrible quarterback there that was playing, and he had a second IDP, which he didn't.
Second IDP. So, yeah, certainly could have made cuts there. So,
yeah. Could have got him a win.
Yeah, could have got the win as well. And let's not forget, wins are all that matters right now because wins divided by half are what gain you points. So I think that was just a bad look altogether on Kenny's part. I'm actually going to disagree with you here. I think I have Greg winning this matchup. It's close. It's bad matchups everywhere. I don't really like any of this. They both have very solid IDPs. I don't love anything here. I had to look at this 3 different times before I was willing to make a decision. Oddly enough, my decision comes down to I think Geno Smith's going to be better than Will Levis, but Geno Smith is questionable, and there's a small chance he doesn't even play this game, and then I look even sillier. So I'm going to take Greg, but there's a very good chance this one blows up in my face. I'm not a big fan of this matchup one way, shape, or form, and being honest, we've already spent entirely too much time talking about it. When looking over the playoff picture, I don't believe 6 wins is going to get in. To be honest, I don't believe 7 wins is going to be able to fight for a playoff spot. So that brings us to Stevie versus Eric, both sitting at 3 wins. The best either one of these guys could do is 6 wins. I see this as a non-playoff matchup again. When I went and looked, CJ Stroud was the only matchup I liked for Eric in this. I like Stevie at every single position better. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Stevie on this one. Another matchup that doesn't mean anything for the playoffs, but Stevie's my pick, Dan.
I'm going with you too. We can move on to this one pretty quick. The running back situation alone gives it to Stevie just on Barkley. I mean, Miles Sanders is a bum too, but the other guys are questionable. You know how much they're even going to play.
Yeah, Miles Sanders and Jerick McKinnon somewhat cancel each other out, but then Saquon Barkley, even with Aaron Jones out, I like Saquon Barkley infinitely better than AJ Dillon, and then the wide receivers is just not even close. So, yeah, so that was that matchup, and that brings us to this one. Interestingly enough, couple of powerhouse matchups this week. Number one takes on number two, Darren versus JR. I don't think there's much playoff implication here, which is why I have it as our third least significant matchup. Dan, who do you got winning this one?
I think Darren wins. I've said this before. JR's got the wins. He's, but I don't love his team. So I have Darren. I think this could actually have some playoff implications later on, because if JR loses this game, falls to 8-4, he plays you next week, gets him to 8-5, and that might put him into a must-win in Week 14 in order to make the playoffs.
I agree. That must win's against Kenny, so I don't feel too worried for him there. But I agree. When I say playoff implications, I don't see there's a situation. Okay, but even still, at 8 wins, if my playoff model works out, at 8 wins, he'll get in on points. So even if he loses out, I think JR is probably still in this thing.
The only thing I'm going to say, he has the same amount of points as I do, like exactly the same amount of points as I do.
I thought he had more than that. I didn't pay enough attention.
12-19, and that puts Taylor 30 points behind us, Terry 30 points in front of us, and you 30 points in front of us. So I don't think he's guaranteed anything at this point. He's going to come down to him having to get a win at some point.
All right. Well, hey, that's a good point to bring up. That win, I agree, isn't going to be this week. Honestly, I just like Darren's team better at every single position. It's just not close. What a team Darren has built, plain and simple. And then JR losing Mark Andrews and Devon Achane, I just think puts him behind the 8 ball, especially in a week where he has to play Darren. And I don't think it's going to work out well for him. So we are in agreement there. I think it's going to be Darren walking out of this one, which brings us to Taylor versus Rob P. So Taylor sitting at 6 wins, taking on a 3-win Rob P. Obviously, I've liked Rob's team a lot this season. He has just not lived up to it, has 0 chance at the playoffs. I'm going to take Taylor in this one. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what Taylor hoped. It's going to be very interesting to see Jamar Chase without Joe Burrow. It's going to be really interesting to see if Cooper Kupp plays this game. Even if those things don't work out, I think Taylor still has enough to pull out the win, especially with Nico Collins or Odell Beckham, who I really like. I think Odell Beckham takes a big step up with Mark Andrews being out. So I like those guys being able to come in if Taylor does lose Kupp. I would be very interested to see Rob P get Zach Charbonnet into his lineup. I don't know if he realizes how unlikely. I think they now have him listed as doubtful that Kenneth Walker is going to play. I think Zach Charbonnet belongs in this lineup far above Kenneth Gainwell. Yeah,
I'm hopeful that he does put Charbonnet in. I'm going to take Rob to get the win.
Okay.
You don't know what you're gonna get out of Chase. Kupp didn't practice at all today, and we're doing this earlier in the week, so we'd have more information if we waited.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually go with Rob P to take the win this week.
That's interesting because I have a feeling that could lead to some differences. Well, maybe not. I say some differences in our playoff scenario, but that's definitely a game we have different. I got you versus Horvath as my next matchup, Dan. Both you guys currently sitting near the playoffs. Horvath sitting at 8 wins, you sitting at 6 wins. I will go first, as I always do when you are up. I think this is an insanely close game. I had to look at this one multiple times. I think it's going to be the best game of the week when you consider the playoff implications. You guys are pretty well even everywhere. However, if Kupp misses the game, boosting your Puka Nacua, and if Justin Jefferson misses the game, which seems very likely, I have you taking the win here. Horvath just doesn't have anybody I trust to plug into that Justin Jefferson spot. Calvin Ridley is interesting. He had a touchdown last week, but after he had that good week 1, he kind of fell off the map, and I just don't know if we can trust Calvin Ridley to kind of step up at this point. So I'm going to give you the win here, Dan.
Interesting. I'm actually going to give myself the win as well. I have outscored Steve's team 5 out of the last 6 weeks. I'm hoping that continues. I'm nervous. I don't like Javonte Williams going against the Browns defense. That makes me real nervous.
I mean, even Cook against that Philadelphia defense. Philadelphia has been a tough matchup for running backs lately.
They've been a tough matchup for them. I mean, I don't think Mahomes had a great game. I mean, I think Allen could have thrown 3 picks this game against, because I think Allen could have a bad game.
Yeah.
Which I think would benefit me, especially with Jordan Love going against Detroit's defense, which has looked kind of soft lately. So.
Yeah. Do you feel one way or the other about Chris Olave with Jameis Winston now playing instead of Derek Carr?
Well, I think Derek Carr is going to play. I wish it was Jameis Winston.
Oh, okay.
I wish it was Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston will actually target him. Olave in their last game had 0 targets in the entire first half with Carr in. He scored 20 points in the second half. He scored all 20 of his points in the second half and got 9 targets from Jameis
Winston.
Marcus Russell.
The slander of Jameis Winston.
With Jameis in there. All of his points, all of his targets come with Jameis. They don't come with Cook or Carr.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm losing my mind tonight. But I'm really counting on the defense of the Dolphins.
I was going to say, I love that Miami defense pickup for you.
Oh, yeah. I planned out my defenses for the next 5 weeks. Like, I went and picked up Miami and the Saints.
Yeah.
Because they have some good matchups coming up.
Yep. I'm doing something similar. I mean, that's
what you got to do at this point. There. I'm watching your moves.
All right, which brings us to my team because I think there's a much better matchup to talk about to end this segment of the show. It's me versus Phil, Dan's 2 rivals taking on one another. What do you got here, Dan?
I think you're going to get the win. I am nervous, though, because Dak going against a terrible Washington team.
Yeah.
He could have a huge game. Ford going against Denver's defense is not great. Diggs against that Philadelphia defense, not great. So I think your team pulls off the win. I hope you get the win for playoff implications. I like to see Phil fall behind me, and I can jump up with a win this week ahead of him by a game. I will say if he does pull off the win, and you can somehow lose again next week to JR.
Oh, I'm almost out of the playoffs in that situation.
It would put me and you in a week 14 win. Whoever wins is going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah,
I think that completely. I don't want to see your big 3 against my team for a playoffs on the line matchup. We might have to go drive together and sit and watch that together somewhere, maybe in Buffalo.
We'll see if we can pull that off. I am gonna pick myself to win. However, I'm gonna contradict you a little bit here. Denver gives up like the most points to running backs, and Philadelphia gives up the most points to wide receivers. So Ford and Diggs are not the issue for him, in my opinion. First of all, he's starting K-Dot against Travis Kelce, and when I was doing my matchups, that's the only thing I have myself winning. I think we can cancel every single other matchup out. I will not be surprised if however many points Kelce beats K-Dot and by. That's how many points I win this matchup by. I'm a little pissed. Detroit Lions are actually my stream of the week. I just wrote my article today. Denver is my number 2. I don't know how I missed that Detroit was out there in our league when I went and signed Denver. So I don't love Denver as much as I'd like to. But, hey, if you're right about Jerome Ford getting shut down, that should play out really, really well for me. So I prefer him at defense. I think Detroit is going to go off in front of the national audience tomorrow. But I do think, again, it's going to come down to however many points Kelce beats K-Dot and by. That's how many points I beat Phil by. And
let me ask you this, because I know Mahomes and Kelce have not been living up to your expectations lately. Where are you at with them? Are you nervous?
Oh, no,
not
at all. They've been playing. They're off and on. They're not the consistency that I want. But I mean, if you go look at the total points, they're still the number 1 tight end, still the number 1 quarterback. If not, he's super close to being the number 1 quarterback. What a buy by Phil to go to that question to go buy Dak Prescott when he did, because Prescott is just going off and has another easy matchup, which kind of cancels it out. What bothers me about what's going on with Mahomes, not so much Kelce, because I still feel like I have an advantage every time I put Kelce out there. I don't feel like Mahomes is providing me with much of an advantage right now, which is going to raise some questions come keeper time. But I think I don't know how much I want to overreact. And to be honest, looking at my team, there's really nobody I'd rather keep than Patrick Mahomes. So
I thought maybe you'd consider Montgomery there with the numbers he puts up when healthy.
With the ages,
know that
he's up to 27 years old. So
when you see what you could potentially get with Mahomes, I could see you making a move there.
I'm not going to rule it out because, like I said, I don't feel like he's the advantage. And if I know you guys don't read my articles, but I have built a hell of a quarterback stream of the week this season, just with the quarterbacks that have been out there on waivers. And so I know I can play that game. I just don't know if in this league I want to play that game. I think with 14 teams, I'd rather just have Mahomes and stick with it that way. That's just me. And I mean, Dan, that's been the words of advice you've had for ages. I think the most interesting playoff matchup we have, Dan. possibly round one of the playoffs for these two teams. Terry Wagner taking on Rob Motts. Terry sitting at 6 wins, Motts sitting at 5 wins. Dan, I'll get us started here. Motts is a revelation over the last few weeks. His buying in of the Jacksonville offense has worked out well. And honestly, I think it works out again for him this week. I'm picking him to win. Better matchups when it comes to everything across the board, except for defense. Terry with that Dallas defense, who have just been putting up monster numbers, doing great every single week, pick sixes every other week, it feels like. That's scary, but I think Rob is going to be able to survive it. I question Terry having Gus Edwards on the bench. I don't know if I would flex him over D-Hop or Amari Cooper, with Amari Cooper having that rookie quarterback, but I think it should be considered. Gus Edwards just finding the end zone every single week. I don't know if that would be enough to beat Motts in this matchup. I am picking Motts because I think the Chargers taking on Baltimore is going to be a problem, whereas Jacksonville taking on Houston is the opposite of a problem. I think it's going to work out really well in Jacksonville Jaguars' favor. I'm picking Rob Motts here.
I'm picking Motts as well. Not only just the Jaguars, but Tank Dell. I mean, Tank Dell's been outstanding. I think that could be a high-scoring game between the two teams. And if that's the case, Rob could put big numbers this week.
Yeah. Imagine my ass bitching about problems at wide receiver, having traded away Tank Dell and Mike Evans at points during this season. So just bad moves all around in this one. Like I said, I do love the Dallas defense. How do you think Pittsburgh is going to fare against this Jake Browning, Dan, as a Bengals fan? What are your thoughts on that one?
I think that Pittsburgh defense could put up some points against him. I think he'll be okay. I envision that game being a 10-9 game. One of the things about Joe Burrow, and the Dancing Squirrels are dedicating the rest of their season to Joe Burrow, by the way.
I love
it. Joe Burrow does so much to escape some of those sacks and those magic plays he has. I just don't think that Browning's going to have that in him, where I think there's going to be a lot more sacks in this game because of that. And I watching a little bit of that game after Burrow got hurt, he was tending to hold on to the ball for a bit too long, and you just can't do that against TJ Watt and the rest of that Pittsburgh defense.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought when I was picking Rob to win this one as well, which could create some problems for Terry in the long run, which brings us to, as I mentioned, we are going to focus the second half of this show on the playoffs. So, Dan, in the current standings, they don't show the stars when you do it on your computer, but Darren is the only clinched team, which means there are a lot of people still alive. That means 8 wins could seriously miss the playoffs. But these are the top 6 teams. However, I'm going to scroll past Darren and Horvath there with their 8 wins. And actually, I'll scroll past JR here with his 8 wins, because these are the interesting teams. We are likely looking at 3 teams that are in. Obviously, you pointed out some scenarios where JR has a problem. But 4 through 9, Rob at 5 wins, who has won, I believe, 2 or 3 straight, and I believe could win out. That's the kind of schedule Rob has to finish this thing off. So, Dan, let's just start off by listing our 6 playoff teams, and then we can do a little bit more in-depth analysis on the playoffs. So who do you have making the playoffs currently?
Darren and Horvath are my top 2. This is where it gets it. So I have you at 3. Scroll up. I'm missing a team. Who's in 3rd right now? JR.
JR.
So I got JR in. I think he'll get that win over Kenny, get him to 9. Get him in. So JRU. I got Phil at 5, and I got Taylor at actually, you know what? I'm gonna put Terry in at 6.
Oh my goodness. So we only have one team not the same, and that's because I have you making the playoffs over Terry. I have Terry out. So I have Darren as my 1. I have myself getting the bye week. I have JR, you, Phil, Horvath in that order. So let's talk a little bit about, let's start with Taylor and Motts. I don't know if you have any notes on these. So we both have these guys who are currently in the position to make the playoffs. I actually have Terry, Taylor, Motts, Phil, and Horvath all finishing at 8 wins, and this coming down to points, and Phil and Horvath getting in on points. So with Taylor, I just put that he's too far below Phil and even Terry to be able to steal that points to get into the playoffs. He needs Fields to pop off to be able to kind of make any run to get into the playoffs and maybe steal a win in the playoffs, but I have him missing the playoffs. And with Motts, Cinderella story, I do have him winning out. I have him beating Terry this week. I have him beating Kenny next week, beating Greg, getting himself to 8 wins. However, his points just are not there for him to make a tiebreaker round. That's kind of my thoughts on those 2 teams. But I do have Rob winning out and getting to 8 wins this year.
Trying not to look too far ahead. I think Rob does win this week. I think he has to win next week to get him to that 7 and 6 mark. but him being so reliant on the Jaguars, that Week 14 matchup, you think he's going to get that win against Greg, evenly matched, Rob's been hot. He has the Jaguars going against that Browns defense.
Yeah, it could be a problem.
I think that could be a rough week for him in Cleveland. You don't know what the weather could be like,
Very interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. 2 weeks of weather in Northeast Ohio is impossible to predict.
So I see Rob as ending up 7-7 right there, which I think is a victory for him.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully gets lots of points and maybe he can win the lottery there and get in the top 3 draft.
Well, I was gonna say if he gets to that 8 wins, that gets him that extra point because we are rounding down when it comes to that. So let's talk a little bit about Terry. So again, I have Terry, but I don't think the points are going to be enough for Terry. When you look at everybody who has the points right now, Terry's at 1252. So Terry is over 100 points behind Phil. And then I guess if it does come down to points, I may be wrong on my tiebreakers here. But I have Horvath being the team that's falling. And Horvath is only 16 points behind Terry. So that's the issue, I think Horvath could start putting up points, especially if he sorry, Eric, I just saw your comment. I've been looking at everything else. Eric wants to know if we've raved about his team. We're not quite there for you yet, buddy. I'm looking forward to seeing what you build next year. No raving about that team this season. But again, I just don't think Terry's going to have enough to sneak past Horvath. Obviously, you do. So do you have any notes on Terry before we talk about the 5 teams we have in common?
I have Terry sneaking past me. I have Horvath in.
Well, yeah.
As far as Terry has the star power to get there. He just has tough matchups this week. His schedule the rest of the way. It could come down to him and Horvath do play each other week 14.
Play each other, exactly.
That could come down to be another game of whoever wins is in.
But see, I have Horvath losing out and getting to 8 wins, but the teams Horvath is playing. Horvath has who was it this week? I'm missing it on my notes. You this week, Darren next week, Terry the week after that. So I have him losing out and going 8 wins. I think he gets ahead of Terry on points, basically. I think it's his schedule that's doing him a disservice. So I think Terry, even with the win, because we have Terry losing this week. If Terry gets by Mott's this week, then Terry probably does get in, and it could be at the expense of Horvath pretty easily because people need Phil to keep losing because Phil's points are going to win any tiebreaker. So,
I mean, he has a tough schedule. He has you this week. He lost Darren last week. Who's he have next week?
Nah, he has Eric and Rob P to end the season. So
that Rob P matchup could be a tough one for him.
I don't know. That team just has underperformed all season long. So I have Phil. What do I have him? Losing this week to me, but winning his next 2 matchups, finishing at 8 wins. And as again, points are what have me getting him in. I want to talk a little bit about your team because I actually have you finishing at 9 wins. I have you winning out, beating myself and Taylor along with your win against Horvath this week. I don't think, honestly, I don't think this week is, I think, the one you need to worry about. I think you should have the next 2 weeks pretty well in the bag. QB problems are what's going to hurt you. They're either what's going to keep you out of the playoffs. But the thing is, I like Jordan Love a lot this week. I haven't looked at his far ahead schedule, but I know it's not terrible at all. I like him a lot this week. But the problem is, you never know what you're going to get from him. So even if you do make it, and I do have you making it as the 4 seed, I don't think you make it very far in the playoffs. So I don't have you out. I have you all the way up at the 4 seed.
I agree with you completely that you just never know what you're going to get with him. Luckily, he does play Detroit this week. The week I play you, he's going against the Giants defense. So that should help me keep it somewhat.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Yeah.
Week 15, he plays Tampa Bay.
Then giving up a ton of points this week. So
then Carolina and Minnesota finish out the last couple weeks.
I was going to say, I knew it was really good matchups. Carolina, while they are a bad team, actually does really good job at slowing down fantasy quarterbacks. I think just because everybody runs against them the entire time. So that would be an interesting one. So the way my thing has played off, like I said, I went through, I think I get the bye on points. I gave Darren, obviously, the bye. I gave myself the bye. So I have JR at 3, Horvath at 6. And then I have, I have JR losing that matchup. I think Horvath not only sneaks in, but gets past him in that matchup. And I think he maybe has Justin Jefferson back for that week, which is going to be enormous for him. The quicker he gets Justin Jefferson back, and I don't think it'll be this week, but the quicker he gets JJF back, the better position Horvath is going to be in. And I think that's going to be enough to beat a JR team that has lost Mark Andrews, and you don't know how quickly Devin Ashane's going to be playing again. So I have Horvath making it to the Final Four in a 3-6 matchup, which means he would be taking on me. And I have Phil Phil beating you yet again, just to everyone's chagrin and especially yours. I have Phil beating you because of the quarterback issue. So I think it's going to be Phil versus Darren, myself versus Horvath in the final four. What do you think?
I mean, once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. I mean, I just don't think, to me, no one's going to beat Darren. So
I agree. Darren is still my champion. I have him beating me in the championship. So you look at Darren, and it's just hard. Let me go ahead and while we're finishing up talking here, let's go ahead and just put his team up on the screen. When you look at that team, it's hard to imagine a situation where he loses. Jalen Hurts, Joe Mixon with all the volume, DeAndre Swift with all the volume, Christian Kirk doing just enough, Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. He has Jake Ferguson, who's played really well. He is also planning for defense, and all of this without Kenneth Walker. I see he's already made the change there. I wanted to note in his matchup, I think Raheem Mostert was the start over Kenneth Walker in that matchup to begin with. But when you look at this team, I don't see a team in our league that's ready to step up and beat Darren's team, plain and simple. I think he should win this championship pretty easily.
Well, if he doesn't, then he never will win, ever.
Jesus Christ. So there it is. And I do have Darren winning out, by the way, and tying Phil at 13-1. He has Horvath next week and Eric the week after that. Eric, you could salvage your entire season if you beat Darren in week 14 and ruin him tying the best record in league history. So there you go. That's what you're playing for. Plan for week 14, buddy. Beat Darren in week 14. Everyone, it is time for the game. And Dan, I have to be honest, I did so much time preparing for the rest of the show. I did not prepare for the game. But let me give you a little history on what happened the last few weeks. So Dan, in the week where we had Phil on the show, Phil actually came in and immediately won the game. I scored 56 points that week. He won 57. So the only time Phil has ever participated, he brings in a win. Last week, you and I were absolute trash. We picked via text messages. You scored 31 points. I scored 18. But Dan, that was good enough for your 6th win in the game of the season. I am sitting at 3 wins. Taylor and Phil have a win apiece. Eric, if you're still out there, what we do is we say who we think is going to be our best quarterback and our best flex play, any running back, wide receiver, tight end, or even defense if you want to get goofy with it like Dan did a few weeks ago. So Dan, you want me to go first? You want to go second?
I mean, you need time to think because you didn't prepare.
Oh, I have my rankings up. I just got to choose who I want to pick out of running back, wide receiver. So
go ahead.
All right. You know what? Yes, I will go. I'm going to go. I think he needs a get right game like never before. I'm going to go Patrick Mahomes and Stephon Diggs. I think Diggs, again, that Eagles defense gives up a ton of points to fantasy wide receivers, and I think he needs a get right game. So give me Mahomes and Diggs.
I'm going to take Lamar Jackson and CeeDee Lamb.
Lamar and CD. All right. If anybody out there in TV land wants to participate, do it now while we're saying our goodbyes. We need your top quarterback. We need your top flex play. Dan, any parting words for our friends? Horvath takes Dak and CD with the stack this week.
I love you guys. And Joe Burrow.
Rest
I
in
still
peace.
think I should get a warranty on that trade there, Kenny.
Hold on one second. Eric, you gave me Stroud. Now give me your favorite flex play if you haven't yet. Any wide receiver, running back, tight end, anyone you want there, I'll make sure I get it in the document. If you win, we'll call you out next week. Stroud would be a very, very interesting one. I think he could have a monster week this week. My parting words are what my parting words always are. Phil, you might have been the best guest in show history. I hope you have the worst fucking Thanksgiving of your entire life. I hope Christian McCaffrey is just scoring touchdown after touchdown while you are trying to eat your dinner and it just ruins your taste buds. So not only do I hope you lose in fantasy this week, I hope you lose your taste buds and your Thanksgiving dinner is absolute trash. That is our parting words for our Thanksgiving episode. Eric, if Eric wins on CJ Stroud and Jerick McKinnon as the best 2 plays this week, my goodness, what are we doing? I love it. Horvath says he only needs CJ Stroud. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Everybody in this league, everybody who tunes into the show and plays along with us. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving, except Phil. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, that's it. I'm getting over COVID. I'm jumping off this show. Have a good night, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.